today with Sherri and Wayne Connell from the Invisible Disabilities Association. And if you've been online looking for anything to do with your invisible illness or invisible disability, I'm sure you're more than familiar with their website and all the resources they have to offer. So we're honored to have you guys here with us today. I wondered if we could start out, Sherri, by you telling us a little bit about what you deal with on a daily basis with your invisible illness, because I know that your story is the heart and the passion behind your association.
Okay, well, let me just tell you a little bit about my background. I used to sing and dance in musicals. I used to act in commercials and model in fashion shows. I was a cheerleader in high school and college. I took care of 9 horses when I was 10 years old. I worked at a pet store when I was 13. I worked at a clothing store when I was 14. And also when I was 14, I got bit by a tick in Arkansas and got a really bad case of Lyme disease, only at the time I didn't know what it was. So I started getting chronic headaches and chronic fatigue and stomach problems, and the doctors didn't know what it was, and by the time I was 19 I started having bouts with paralysis. But I pushed on. I ended up getting 3 college degrees, and I worked very hard, worked multiple jobs for myself through college. And again, I was in musicals. I had a lot of fun. I was very, very busy, very goal-oriented, and I had a lot of dreams for my life. And I used to get bouts with pneumonia multiple times a year. And then when I was 27, I had a bad bout with pneumonia, and suddenly I became paralyzed from the ribs down. And I was hospitalized for a week, and they did all kinds of tests trying to find out what was wrong. And they finally diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis. And at the time, I really thought, well, that's okay. I can still work. I can still sing from my wheelchair. I can still do a lot of things from my wheelchair. And my boss was amazing. He said he was going to buy me a wheelchair-accessible desk. I could come in whenever I wanted to. But the problem is I was flat out on my back in horrible, horrible pain, hardly able to sit up. It took everything I had just to go from one room to the other. I was in a lot of physical therapy. I couldn't think straight. And I always had the attitude that I was going to get through this and I was going to get better and get back to my job. But it never happened. And after a lot of physical therapy, I started walking again. Can't walk very far, can't stand very long. And that's when people started saying, well, look, you're walking, why aren't you back to work? But they had no idea that it wasn't the walking that was keeping me from working. It was the unbelievable pain and fatigue and difficulty thinking and keeping things straight. And it was everything I could do just to shower or, get from one room to the other. And every year I said, I'm going to get better. And I looked for all kinds of things to get better. But 20 years later, I'm still in the same position. It's all I could do to get out of bed and go from one room to the bathroom or, just get something to eat or do my therapies or take a shower. And so I just want to give you a little bit of my background, because a lot of times people think when somebody has a debilitating illness, they naturally assume that they're just not being motivated, and that's just not the case. In fact, I'm finding out most people were a lot like me, very type A, very goal-oriented.
Well, I can certainly appreciate, I don't understand the depth of the pain you've been in, and I know that you're a fighter from the day I've known you. And it amazes me all that you and your husband, Wayne, here have been able to accomplish. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your association and how it began, and how, there's a lot of people who are listening who are in the kind of pain you're in, and they look at you and think, how did her husband join her on this journey to start an organization that reaches out to other people? Because it is hard just to get out of bed and take a shower some days, much less do anything more, even as a volunteer.
Well, I just say a little bit, and then I'm going to let my hubby talk. basically, I was in that position where people were not understanding the horrific fatigue that was keeping me from my dreams and my goals and the things that made me happy. I would never give those up, purposefully for anything. And so what I did was I was starting to write in my journal, and I was writing what people were saying to me and the things that how they were commenting, and then I started writing like little letters that I could give to people to explain what I'm going through, explain what MS is, and explain how I wanted my life back more than anything, and I was fighting for it. But this is what I was going through, but when I would give it to them, they always ask questions, and it's, well, but can't you do this? Can't you work from home? Can't you do this? Can't you do that? But you look fine. You look, you don't look like you're sick. You look perfectly normal, and all those kinds of things. And so that's where my husband stepped in, and he said, you know what? This is just so hard for you to try to explain it, and it upset me so much all the time that he said, why don't we put some of these writings up on the internet? And the internet was very new back then. And this way you can just give them a little card with the address on it, and if they say, well, why aren't you back to work, or what's wrong with you? You have multiple what? You can just hand them this card and say, go to my website, and it'll tell everything. You won't have to use all that energy to just keep trying to explain over and over and over. And we thought, well, we'll get a few hits here and there, but what happened?
Well, I got to back up a little bit here. So, because we actually met in 1992 after she was diagnosed with MS, after she was already diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I was smitten from the beginning. Beautiful lady, bright, funny, but obviously she kind of told me this is how it is. This is what I'm unable to work anymore. These kind of things, and I don't know, for some reason it didn't faze me at all, because I knew who she was. She wasn't MS, she wasn't Lyme disease, she wasn't those things. She was Sherri, and that's the Sherri I fell in love with. So we got married in '94. In 1996, she coined the phrase invisible disabilities, because she said, Wayne, I have an invisible disability. People look at me and they see it's invisible. And so I said, well, let's take some of your writings in 1997. I said, let's put it up on the internet and let's just share. Well, all of a sudden, 20 to 25,000 people a month were coming to the website. It was unbelievable. Just coming, and they were saying, you put into words what I've been trying to share with my loved one. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I had no idea that what I was going through was important at the time. I thought, hey, this is what husbands are supposed to do, take care of their wives. But I had no idea that so many husbands had abandoned their wives, or so many wives had abandoned their husbands, or families left their adult children and said, you're just faking or making this thing up. And I didn't think that was right. I think that we wanted to educate them. What was exciting is we wrote a book, and I don't know if we're going to talk about the book here. I sure hope we will. But the book has really been transforming lives all over the world, and it's just amazing. It's called But You Look Good, because that's what people would always say to Sherri. Well, but you look good. She's like, well, I'd give up looking good to be feeling good. Because what's the old adage we hear? Well, at least you have your health. Well, what happens if you don't have your health? Does that make you any less of a person? No, it shouldn't.
So basically, we'll talk more about that later. Basically, I had, unfortunately, many years of notes of things that people had said. That wasn't very encouraging. We'll talk about that later.
So tell us exactly what an invisible disability is.
I can answer this. So what an invisible disability is really the issue of symptoms, is what I call it. And I want to make a little definition of the word disability. Somebody who has a disability doesn't mean they're necessarily disabled, and we want to really let people know that that's really a fine line, because we see people all the time. We just saw the Olympics recently where the gentleman was running who had both his legs have been amputated. Now, he has a disability in a sense. He doesn't have feet, but obviously he's running in the Olympics. He's not disabled by it. So we want to let people understand that.
A lot of times people look at the word disabled or disability as a negative, and we look at the word disability as a challenge.
Right.
Some people's challenges are bigger than others. Some people are more manageable. Some everybody's different.
So, and obviously people with disabilities are disabled in a lot of cases as well. So that's part of it. But what is invisible is really the symptoms. And the symptoms can be everything from brain fog. That's a big term we hear all the time. Yeah, but it's cognitive problems. There's brain fog. There's chronic pain. There's neurological issues. There's where people have nerve pain. There's things like mental disorders that can be part of this. It's very broad for a reason.
Debilitating fatigue, and a lot of times people think fatigue is, I'm just a little bit tired, but we all know the difference between debilitating fatigue. It's a wall. You cannot move,
right,
no matter how much you want to.
Right, and it's something that impacts on a chronic basis, a day-to-day, over a long period of time. And it's not just limited to where you can't see it on the person, because obviously there's people in wheelchairs out here in Colorado, where we're from. There's actually a wheelchair basketball league where they play basketball. Well, what if you're in a wheelchair and you've got chronic pain from a lower back damage, and you can't play basketball? So it's that invisible disability that's impacting you, not the wheelchair. It's the assistive device doesn't necessarily impair somebody. In fact, a lot of times it allows them to do things that they couldn't do before. But what's interesting, the statistics say that about 80% of the people that are disabled, so actually truly disabled, not just with a disability, don't use any assistive device. They don't use crutches or canes or wheelchairs. So it's really that invisibleness that goes across the whole gamut of the human experience, and it's where it impacts you and it makes you do something different. It may be, for example, somebody with hearing impairment, and if they have hearing loss in one ear and they plug up the other ear, they can't hear at all, right? So but that's invisible. We don't see that. But maybe through the use of technology, they'll regain some of the hearing. Or somebody's losing vision impairment. I mean, it's really broad for a reason, because it impacts so many of us.
A lot of times people say, well, I have such and such a diagnosis. Is that an invisible disability? There really isn't a list of illnesses that are disabilities, because some people have illnesses, and with the change of diet or medication or less stress, they do quite well. So you can't say everybody that has an illness is automatically disabled. It's how severe the symptoms are, and that could be anything.
Right, and sometimes they manifest themselves physically. Obviously, when Sherri's dealing with fatigue and from her MS and pain, and she's, if we go to the zoo, well, we're going to use a scooter because she can't walk those long distances. And of course, she's got one that goes 8 miles an hour, and I can't keep up with her. But hey, and little horns and headlights and everything. But the reality is that if you looked at her in the scooter, you say, oh yeah, I can see that she's got a disability. But when she gets out of the scooter and steps up to take some photos, then people are like, well, who is that? Is she faking it? She just wanted that little speed thing to zip around it? No, the reality is that everybody's got different limitations. This is one thing that I think that autism has done really well on, is they created what I call the spectrum. The autism talks about the spectrum. Well, in reality, all illnesses have a spectrum. They're all illnesses. Some people with MS are 70 years old and they run 5 miles a day, and then there's other people that literally cannot move out of bed from one moment to the next. And it changes over time. It changes, as we grow older. It changes in circumstances. All those things are impacted by that. So that's why that spectrum. And what if you have multiple? What if you have chronic fatigue and you have MS and you have Lyme disease and you have diabetes or whatever, and you have multiples? Those combined are going to impact you different ways as well.
I think the bottom line is it really doesn't matter if you use an assistive device or not, whether it's visible. A person can, like he was saying, someone using a wheelchair may or may not have the debilitating fatigue. I've met a lot of people who do use wheelchairs or walkers, and they say, well, then I don't have an invisible disability. And I say, well, what's keeping you from being able to work? Is it being unable to walk? And they say, no, it's the fatigue. Well, that's the invisible disability. That is the challenge. That is your hurdle. It's the fatigue. It's the things that people can't see. Now, somebody might, a friend or family member might believe them a little bit more if they see them in, using those all the time. But generally, it really has nothing to do whether we can see it or not.
hence why it's invisible.
Okay, I'm curious to ask you guys, what are some of the top things that you have heard, or those that you serve have heard, that aren't quite as encouraging as the person who's saying it means it to be?
Well, I think first of all, people need to realize, I mean, people who are ill need to realize that, you know, most people really do mean well. And they are really trying to find something that's encouraging to say. So, I mean, it's really easy to be offended, but sometimes we have to understand, too, that they're really trying. So, easiest one. But you look good. And let me tell you, I want to look good. I mean, girlfriend, you see me 20 minutes ago. I kicked on the makeup and, you know, put a nice top on and combed out my hair for this video. Everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants to look their best. That's really not what that means. What's happening is somebody might say, well, what do you mean you have MS? Or what do you mean you have fibromyalgia or traumatic brain injury? You look good. In other words, you don't look like you're sick.
They're kind of disregarding it. Right.
Yeah. You look perfectly fine. You don't look like you can't work, or you don't look like you can't clean, or whatever the case may be. And that's hurtful. Well,
I tell you, one of the big ones that we hear a lot of time, and I even wrote a big blog about this, but it's all in your head.
Yeah.
You know, we hear this not only from friends, but we hear this from doctors, which, you know, you're going to a doctor for help, and they can't find out what's wrong, so their assumption is, well, then nothing is wrong, so it's just in your head. Well, the ironic thing about that is, any mental disorders, people with MS, autism, a whole host of different illnesses, guess what?
Migraines in your head?
It's in your head. It is. But that's not what they mean by that.
Double.
Yeah, they're just meaning that, you know, you're making it up, really, is what they mean.
Wow. And let me tell you, in the years that I've talked to so many people in support groups, do I run across people who want to be sick? No. I don't know anybody who's making it up. Now, if they're making it up, that's a whole other issue. But, gosh, why would you tell somebody that you love that they're making it up, especially if they, you know, they have a history of background of being very goal-oriented and they're missing out on things they want to do.
Well, what do you think about, you know, it could be worse, by the way. Do you know that? It could be worse. You know, you could be, I know so-and-so, and they are blah, 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 and it could be worse for you.
That's fine for me to say if I'm living with an illness. You know, I can say, oh, gosh, I got to wake up today. Okay, it could be worse, Sherry. But it's not really appropriate to say it to someone else because, there are lots of people worse off than me, but there's people worse off than them, and there's people who have passed away.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's not a matter of judging who is worse off and who's better off. It's dealing and loving that person the way they are and what they're dealing with.
What do you think about maybe you should try harder?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maybe you should try harder. I had a relative say, well, wouldn't you just feel better if you push harder? I don't know, a lot of people would say, well, wouldn't you just feel better if you get out more? Well, I think if I felt better when I got out more, I'd be out more every day, right?
Right. It's not about, try harder. Are you kidding? I mean, the amount of work that people go through with illness every single day, and for them to get out of bed is a marathon. I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's trying harder.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know, being somebody who's not dealing with any real chronic illnesses or anything like that, the pain that Sherri goes through on a daily basis, I would be out cold on the floor.
Calling 911.
Whining, whimpering. I know when I get a cold how bad it is, you know. Oh, the world is coming to an end because I have a cold. You know, good thing is she's actually very compassionate about it for me.
For about 2 days, and then I'll probably.
Well, you know, this is one of my favorite ones is where people say, yeah, I get tired too.
Oh, boy.
You know, I understand. Oh, I understand. Yeah, I get tired too,
But they get up in the morning, they go to work, they're rushing their kids around, they're cleaning the house, they're cooking, they're cleaning. Of course they're going to be tired by the end of the day. I'm talking about being so sick you can barely crawl out of bed to go to the bathroom to throw up. That's how I feel every single day. I talk about being tired, so let's get to
Well, no, my thought is that the best thing to do if you want to find out if how somebody's feeling, and is really to ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really about.
I think that's the biggest thing is don't assume, just ask.
Well, I'd say the final one really is the whole issue of looking on the bright side or just being positive. We hear that all, just be positive. Well, I'll tell you what. If you're sick and in pain for the last 20 years, and you're feeling a little bit depressed today, guess what? You have a right to be a little bit depressed.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go back and forth. There's going to be days that I'm going to say, well, I've lost my career, I've lost my horse, I lost my friends, I've lost people in the family, I've lost this whole list of things. I can't, do this, that, and the other. But I'm going to, find good things, and that's one thing I try to do is I count my blessings, and I try to be as positive as I can. But there's times when I'm going to mourn with what I'm going through. And but if a person's overall trying to have a good attitude about it, allow them to cry, allow them to grieve, because it's a cycle.
Yeah, they lost who they were and who they were going to be, and those dreams are like losing a person, and you're going to go through the steps of grieving, and you're going to deal with that, and that's not being negative.
No, it's not being negative. It's normal. If somebody lost their job, they would grieve too. If somebody lost their ability to do things, they would grieve too. But it's always there.
Right. So that's some of the discouraging things.
Yeah.
Okay, Wayne and Sherri, I know you've heard some things that have also been supportive occasionally. And I know that even though you may not have heard them, there's some things in your heart that you would like to hear from those around you. Do you have some tools that you could give those of us who live with illness to share with our friends and family?
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. First thing is I do want to say is it really, when somebody has an illness, we need to understand that they are the expert in their illness. And if we want to find out about their illness, we need to ask them about their illness. And we need to find out what their limitations are in those areas. And I think that'll really tie into what we're talking about on things you can say that are really encouraging.
I think putting down the assumptions and the judgments and just listening. And I've gone over this because obviously, as I said, I have a long list of many years of things that people have said, and I wasn't trying to really just keep track of it other than just try to understand it because I wanted to see their side of it. And so the mirror image of that is if I'm going to say, oh, don't say this or don't say this, then you do need to come up with some things that are encouraging. And so I think if you come through with, first of all, the attitude of not judging or assuming, saying, well, you look this way or you look that way, or you must feel that way, that's all assumptions. And those are all, we can throw assumptions out. Just ask somebody, how are you doing today? And if you want to tell somebody that they look good, just say, you look great today. I'm sorry you don't feel as good as you look, or I really love that blouse, or that's a great haircut. People want compliments too. But just to basically validate what they're going through. Wow. You mean you've been through all that? That's got to be really hard.
I think about that when somebody's at an event and I know what they're going through and how difficult it was for them to be at that event, and to know that was the only event they could go to this year. This is a time where you can really say something very encouraging. I can't believe what it took for you to be here. I am so amazed and so honored that you wanted to do this because I know how you're going to pay for it. And I think that's a big way of saying encouraging, to really honor them for their battle and journey that they go through every day. It was interesting. We every year have an honors banquet, and one of our awards is what's called our Perseverance Award. Obviously, you ladies know what it means to persevere. And I was talking with the person who's getting the award, and she said, "Wow, I never knew I could be to get an award for being a train wreck." And the funny thing about it is that we're actually honoring her really for that fight that she's gone through every day, and not that she's overcome it in a sense, but the fact that she keeps going on day after day.
She keeps trying. She's looking for ways to help herself. She's looking for ways to help other people through it. And I know a lot of friends and family members get frustrated with people with chronic illness because they might invite them to a dinner or something, and the person says, well, I don't know if I can make it, and they take that as, or you don't really care. So a good thing that you can tell them is, oh man, I'd really love to have you over for dinner Friday night, but you know what? If at the last minute you can't make it, I'll totally understand. That way, we feel good about saying, oh yes, I'd love to do it, but we don't feel bad if we're sick on the couch and we just can't do it. And also they know that we're going to pay for it, so there's always a price.
I think you actually make a pact with them, even saying that I'm going to invite you every time, and you can say no every time.
Yeah.
And we're not going to put a limit on, well, if you do that for a year, then no longer am I going to ask you. No, I'm going to do this from now on, and you can say no every time. And if you make it that one time, wow, that's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And just asking, I mean, just listening, like I said. And if somebody says something like, wow, you know, I went to college and I worked so hard for my career and now I can't work, I can't even take care of myself. You know, instead of saying, well, you're lucky you don't have to work. And just listen and just say, wow, this is really, her, you know, her career, her work was important to her. And I'm so sorry you lost your career. This must be hard.
Well, I hope those are some good encouraging things to help.
So I'm wondering if you could share some things with us that that people appreciate, some ways to reach out and help someone that has a chronic condition.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things about when you're dealing with illness and disability is the isolation. Such a big part of it. You know, y'all. Like I hear the term that, well, people only want to be sick because they want attention. Well, the funny thing about it is it doesn't work. You actually get everybody typically advantage you in a lot of cases. They leave you. So one of the things is that you want that human interaction. Well, a great way to do that is we like to use example, and not so that you're putting somebody out either. Is if you're already going to the store, ask somebody, hey, I'm already going. Can I pick you something up? And that little piece of energy, because I know when you only have 2 energies a day or 1 energy a day, that a lot of times that's not grocery shopping. That's just getting out of bed that day or whatever. So that you're already going, so they don't feel like they're putting you out or anything, but you're already going, can I pick something up for you? You know.
Yeah, if you say to someone who's chronically ill, I'm already going, then they're not going to feel guilty.
Right.
And then you're not having to make an extra trip. You might just have to throw a few extra things in your cart, drive by the house and drop them off. But that's just a simple thing that can easily be done. And if you have a little extra time and you stop in, you know, if you call ahead of time, you say, you know, if you have some extra laundry, I'll sit there and fold it for you. Or, I mean, that's just, you know, depending on how much time you have.
Well, I think we think of, you mentioned little things. I think we think that, oh, I'm going to have to go, I don't know, change their diapers or clean out their whole house or do something, you know, massive, when really it's those little things that show that you care. And it may be as simple as, hey, the first Tuesday of every month, I'm going to come bring you lunch, you know, and I'm going to sit with you only for half an hour because I know how hard it is for you to talk and how difficult it is, but just to be there for you, give you a sounding board, a place to listen. So little simple things like that. Or maybe a little phone call that just says, hey, I'm praying for you, or I'm thinking about you, or I just want to let you know I care, and even though you may be alone, I want you to know that I hear and I think about you.
Yeah, or while you're making a meal, let's say you're throwing together something in the crock pot or on the grill, throw double in. Put half of it in some little baggies they can put in their freezer. And I mean, if you only did that once a month, or if you have a few friends who want to get together and each one of them only does it once a month, and you take turns. And if you don't have people or time, you can even get a little pool and of money, and if everybody just puts in $5 or what have you, depending on how many people there are, and you can hire somebody to clean once in a while. You can bring them a video and sit and watch a movie. There's all kinds of little things that people can do.
Ask them if you can take them to the doctor, or a lot of times all those where the driving can be exhausting and going to the doctor. And probably the worst thing is the driving back from the doctor. One, either you didn't necessarily agree with what they said, or you're just exhausted on having to share your story for the umpteenth time to the doctor. Right. Like so those things are a huge thing.
And it doesn't have to, take up your whole afternoon if you want. You can drop them off at the doctor's office and run a couple errands while you're out and about anyways.
Well, the key for me, though, is I really think is ask the person how you can help them is a big thing. Just ask them. We make assumptions all the time, and the reason why is because we don't ask. How easy is that? Is there any one little thing I can do for you this month that would make a huge difference? And don't make them feel like they're put on the spot. Say, yeah, I don't mind doing anything, I don't mind if that means me to come over and clean up your kitchen. Or if that means, whatever that is, a simple thing that I can come spend an hour with you on a Saturday and just helping you. What can I do?
Yeah.
Wayne, I have a question for you. There are a lot of men who have a wife who is chronically ill. And when someone comes over and says, I'm bringing you dinner, or I'm going to come shampoo your living room floors for you, or I'm going to fold your laundry, the men in the household feel like they should be taking care of that. And it becomes a tension spot because they think, I should be able to do it all. A lot of men won't receive that. And it puts the tension on their marriage. It puts frustration on their wife because they can't do it and they can't really receive the help without more tension in the home. I'm wondering if as a man and a husband, you could just speak for a minute to those men about how to accept help and feel okay about it and understand it's a blessing for everyone, those who are giving and those who are receiving.
Well, I think that, a big part of it is that we have to think about, if you go with a marriage where both people are healthy, you think about kind of a distribution of duties. And to be honest with you, maybe I'm an unusual guy, but I don't mind if somebody would offer in some cases just because, got to go to work each day, got all those things that are going on. I know what's going on with my wife. I think part of it, too, is the fact that is to allow somebody else to care. And that guys don't have to feel like they have to do everything. We can't fix our wives, right? Because we're big fixes, but we want to fix our wives. But there are other things that we can do. And I think that one way of doing that is to allow other people in. We had a friend of ours who actually said to Sherri, because she loves to help Sherri, and she said, if you don't allow me to help, you don't allow me to be what I'm about. In other words, we got to let people help. That's their way of, they feel helpless too. They see their friend hurting, they see their family member hurting, they want to come in and help too. Allow them to be part of that, make it simple. The other thing I want to talk about, kind of this whole fixing it in what I call the dreams. Your dreams have changed when you become chronically ill. Kind of what you were going to do together. A couple things you want to make sure you don't do is that don't allow the caregiver to totally give up on all their dreams. You got to allow them to do something. If they're a photographer and they go once a year to the Canadian wilderness to shoot photography, but you can't go with them, let them go. Don't hold them back on that. Because there's a lot of things they aren't going to be able to do because of that. The other thing with the dreams is find out things you can do together that you didn't used to be able to do. Maybe it's playing games. Sherri and I love watching movies. Well, movie theaters, she can't go to movie theaters. There's a lot of different reasons she can't go to movie theaters. It's just too hard to go. So I put the TV in the house, the big speakers, and every Friday night we watch a movie. And, we invite people over once in a while and they have it. We've been doing this for now, 5 years at least. Mm-hmm. And so that's our way. Plus, when you do it at home, you can stop and get popcorn and you can pause and for other reasons.
It's much more comfortable and controlled.
But it's finding those things you can do together as well. Even as a family. Maybe you can't take the long trips anymore, but maybe you can do a day trip, or maybe you can set up the tents in the backyard and have vacation at home. Do something fun and exciting. You're going to have to come up with new dreams, and don't give up on all of them. Find new ones that you can do together.
Wayne and Sherri, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the Invisible Disabilities Association and your resources. You have a ton of resources, different campaigns, a lot of videos online where people share their stories. So tell us a little bit about the IDA, your resources, your books, that kind of thing, so we can find out how to get more involved at your website?
Well, so the organization, founded the organization in 1997, and in 2004 we incorporated as a 501c3 because we really felt that this is something that was much needed around the nation, around the world. And we have just continued to launch campaigns. We launched in 2007 our Invisible Disabilities community, which is a place for people to gather and to share what they're going through. It's a little bit safer place, I say, somewhat than Facebook, because they got to pass a little test almost to get in there, so that we don't allow people to sell things, and we wanted to just talk about what they're going through on a daily basis.
And I want to give Wayne credit, because he is actually the one who founded the organization. Because of his passion to help my friends and family better understand, and then him finding out that other people were going through this as well. Of course, I was just like everybody else. I thought I was the only one that was dealing with friends and family not understanding. And Wayne became passionate not only about what I was going through, but what millions of other people are going through. So Wayne has founded this, and he's got an amazing board. And he says he includes me, even though they are the ones that do all the work.
Well, she's the inspiration.
He gives me some credit.
Yeah, Sherri's definitely the inspiration.
But I'm not on the board or anything.
Right. So we've got our Invisible Disabilities community. We launched in 2008. We do honors banquets. They're here in Colorado, which is where we live, but we honor people and organizations from around the nation who are making a difference in the disability space. We have launched the Cleaner Indoor Air campaign, which is for people with chemical sensitivities, toxic injuries, trying to deal with what's in our air and how it's impacting us. Sherri deals with this chemical sensitivities on a regular basis. Can't be around anything that's fragranced or perfumed or new plastics, those kind of things, which is a very debilitating and isolating illness. So we've created those. We've got new campaigns coming out. One kind of a teaser called Invisible Heroes. We'll be talking more about that, where we're really focusing on the heroes, the men and women in uniform in both the police and fire and paramedics and military who are dealing with the different illnesses and how they're dealing with that from an invisible nature. We're looking at something even called IDA Motorsports, which is in the whole world of the NASCAR arena. We are doing stuff called IDA Cares. It's continually launching ways that we can help. We're going to be doing something on caregiving, where we're actually producing some training courses for caregivers, so the husbands can learn about how to be expedition ready,
and the wives,
and how to learn that journey, that it's worth the journey, even though it may be 50 years, that journey, and we want to teach them how to do it day by day, how to enhance that. We've launched our InvisibleNoMore.tv, so you can go see all these amazing videos of people's stories. And of course, one of our cornerstones is our book, But You Look Good, which it's a little 60-page guide on what I call learning the language of invisible disabilities. A lot of what we talked about today on encouraging things and discouraging things and what to say and how to help. We've sent over 25,000 of these around the world, and we're just amazed because we've seen husbands on their knees asking their wife for forgiveness. We even had a lady from New Zealand who said, "My husband read it straight away, and he brought me tea and biscuits in bed the next morning."
A cup of tea.
And I understand that that's actually a really big deal. I've talked to somebody from New Zealand. So we've got all kinds of different pamphlets that we put out, everything from disabled parking to, just take something. I mean, funny thing is, people have even told Sherri, "Well, have you tried Tylenol for your pain?" Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got them on service animals, all the different types of how dogs are more than just a pet. So we just keep growing. We just keep launching because we want to help people. What I call the common human experience of living each day and having people believe them, believe what they say. So if I say I can do this, but I can't do that, I have to believe you. I can't go to you and say, "Well, you look like you can," or "You look like you can't," because that's not believing you.
It doesn't matter how you look, whether you're using a wheelchair or not. We shouldn't judge or assume. There are a lot of people who use wheelchairs who are very upset if you say, "Well, you can't do that job," or "You can't go do this," and they can. So it's just about not judging and just listening. And IDA's has seminars and different events.
Yeah, I love going around and having opportunity to speak before groups, businesses, or to keynote caregiver events. I talk about the 7 realities of the invisible becoming visible, or learning the language of invisible disabilities.
Lots of radio interviews. You can access those, the videos. You can access all those on the website and share them with your friends and family to help them better understand.
We just want people to know that the caregivers to know that first that they need to be a caregiver. We want to help them understand that they are, because sometimes they don't believe they are. We want to help them understand that the journey's worth it, and the person they're journeying with is absolutely worth being with. Then we want to help the person with the illness understand that they're not alone. They're not the only person out there. We want them to know that we care and they're not to be abandoned. And we're going to help them understand that they don't have to be shamed by their illness. This is a big thing that we run into where people get shamed. They don't want to tell anybody about what they're going through because they're afraid people are going to react, so they isolate themselves and don't get help. We're going to say, let's not do that either. Let's get help when their help's available. And we want to be there, especially as a partner with you, Lisa, and all the amazing things that you've done. And let people know that, hey, we're here to help. You can have fun and laugh despite all the difficulties as well, because sometimes that's what you need as well. So we just thank you so much, Lisa. It's just been amazing to share with you about invisible disabilities and to know that that's your heart as well, and that's our heart, especially mine with my wife, is to make each day possible for her.